Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS Idris.
Contact, nice to be in orbit. The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void, and once again, I'm Joe Roop. Welcome to the program tonight. We are live on the Fringe FM. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you're listening from tonight. It is Thursday night, the 25th, on into the 26th. A very interesting guest we'll be speaking with tonight, Jurgen Ziewe, a multi-dimensional traveler, conscious explorer, artist, and what he likes to call a reporter. And so this is going to be a fascinating conversation. We're talking about a gentleman that is very well adept in exploring consciousness, but only comes back to give us the reports of what he sees. And this is fantastic. And now we'll give you the website here in just a moment for your reference. If you want to chat tonight, you can go over to the Fringe FM chat room. Just go to thefringe.fm/chat. And the call-in numbers are always the same, 1-800-588-0335. Also, there's a direct line, which is 501-424-5130. I want to thank Jim Elvidge for coming on last night. So all of the shows we've had this week have been fabulous and signed up for, thanks to the support, right? I won't go too deep into that, but look, we've got a few listeners signed up into the Robert Bruce's program. So things are about to get really cool around here. I feel like we're going to have a lot of reporting to do when it comes to exploring consciousness. Real quick, I got to say that this show is brought to you by GetTheT.com. Make sure you sign up for the webinar. Monday is approaching fast. It's getting here quick. So sign up before 4:30 p.m. Pacific at GetTheT.com. Also, the show is brought to you by Ancient Life Oil, the best CBD oil on the planet, known to man, and PrepareWithTheFriends.com. Thank you all for supporting the show so much. Head on over to UFOseekers.com, backed and supported by the Fringe FM and Lighting the Void. And if you want to keep a journalistic approach to what's going on, follow them on social media at UFO Seekers on Twitter, as well as YouTube.com/UFO Seekers. That's where you want to check out the channel, and their website is UFOseekers.com. And if you've had a sighting or something, you know, you can even report strange encounters. If you've had a strange encounter and you live out west, please give them a call. They keep your stuff confidential. They'll have a conversation with you at 661-UFO-7889. I trust them with my whole heart. So if you trust me, give them a call. So tonight, we're going to speak a little bit more about this, hacking into consciousness, hacking into the OBE states, with our guest tonight, Jurgen Ziewe. Now, Ziewe trained as an artist at the Academy of Art. Then he moved to England in 1975 and worked as a designer at multiple agencies. He also produced abstract paintings. He now produces computer art employing fractal elements, which to me is really cool. His influences include the archetypes of Carl Jung, and his work has featured fantasy posters, greeting cards, science fiction book covers. Really awesome. For authors including Vernor Vinge and Peter F. Hamilton. And in 1997, a book showcasing his work entitled New Territories was published. Now, Jurgen sees dreamlike states as being another form of reality. By his own account, he has since 1975 had out-of-body experiences and interactions with interdimensional beings and other dimensions of existence, access via meditation, and lucid dreaming. So there's one website for reference, which is multidimensionalman.com. You can check out that website as well. So we're going to discuss these dimensions. Also, what happens when one focuses their attention for a given amount of time as well. He writes about this in his new book, The 10-Minute Moment, which that's in development, the10minutemoment.com. Mr. Ziewe, thank you for coming on Lighting the Void. I know it's early over there, so I really appreciate your time.
Hello, Joe. It's nice to be here and nice to talk to you.
Yes, it is. And I noticed on your Facebook page that you have something, you're working with, what is it, Gaia? So you're doing interviews with Gaia now. Gaia's kind of shifted a little bit. They're getting into consciousness a lot more, it seems like.
Yeah, the first program was for a German language channel of Gaia, and I've done 3 episodes so far. The last one took place a couple of weeks ago with Tom Campbell. We had a conversation, and we were exploring consciousness, and it was really interesting because Tom looks at the whole issue from a scientific viewpoint, and I come more from an artistic viewpoint. It was really interesting how the convergence of what we experienced and how one supported the other. So yeah, that was really good program.
Yeah, it is. And I went to your website, The Multidimensional Man, and you know what caught my attention? I think the biggest thing that caught my attention on the website is you've made like this diagram of the realities. I don't know if this is consciousness or reality. Do you consider all of this reality or just part of it?
Well, everything we experience now is reality, except we only access a very minute part of it. We access only the part which is accessible to our senses. There's a vast amount of reality which we simply cannot access. I would compare it with the wavelengths of light, for example. We only see a small spectrum of our light frequencies. The rest is invisible to us, is infrared or ultraviolet. So in our physical reality, we cannot access the whole of reality, only a very small part of it.
Well, can you walk me through, before we get into your journeys, your first time when you realized that there was more to this than just sleeping and dreaming?
Yes, I mean, the whole thing started. First of all, I have to say, when I started out, I was a total materialist. I didn't believe in anything supernormal or supernatural. And I simply started out with meditation in order to deal with a bout of depression I had. So a friend of mine introduced me to transcendental meditation. And indeed, after 3 or 4 months, my meditation disappeared. My depression disappeared, and I continued meditating. And because of the results I achieved, I became interested in the background, in the Eastern philosophy and so on. So I started intensifying the meditation, and for about 3 years I carried on. But then came a break. I became frustrated because I felt there were areas in my meditation which went into the subconscious, which had a very negative I came to some very negative sort of layers in my consciousness, which at that time, being an artist, I expressed in my pictures. And then something happened one night, which sort of stopped me meditating, because I accessed a layer which made me feel very uncomfortable. So I thought, okay, that's not going to work. And at that time, I meditated about 6 hours a day. So that was a very intense program. But after that, I stopped. And then out of the blue, about 6 months later, after I hadn't done any meditation whatsoever, I suddenly had this incredible experience of depersonalization, meaning that I started off by me looking at my hands, and I suddenly lost all relationship to my hands. And that escalated until I totally left my body, and I was standing in a space of white light. which was accompanied by a powerful ecstasy. And then that was for the first time that I realized, hang on a minute, reality, life is not what I thought it was. There's something much more to it. So after that, my consciousness shifted into a totally new reality level, and I lost completely the sense of who I was, the identification with my persona. That went totally out of the window. And I didn't know who I was. I found it very difficult to actually get a sense of myself, of my ego. And instead what happened was, when I walked around, I had a sense of being everywhere. There was no locality of myself. Wherever I looked, there was a greater sense of myself. Now, this powerful realization made me aware that there's more to reality than what we normally perceive. So I took up meditation from then on again, and my life completely changed after that. I became more devoted to my meditation rather than seeing it intellectually, so I started gradually meditating. And then a few months later, I had my first out-of-body experience, which came as a total shock because I never heard about this phenomena before. And the way it happened, I was asleep in my bed in a town in Germany, and suddenly I was standing in front of my parents' house in full waking consciousness. I was not just awake, but I was super awake. I was very clear, and I could see everything of the house, every detail. I looked around. I was standing in the garden, and it was a total strange.
It was real. Sensation. It felt real, didn't it?
It was totally real. There was nothing. They had no dream quality whatsoever. I was there. I was physically there. And there was nothing that could convince me that it was anything else. Because I never come across this strange phenomena, I thought something weird has happened. I even thought about how do I get back to my body. I wondered whether I had physically translocated through some very strange phenomena, and I was considering for a moment that I would have to take the bus back, because it was so weird. But when that happened, there were lots of other things surrounding the experience, which I documented in my first book. But after this happened, I went straight back into bed and I woke up. There was no break in consciousness. I went from awake to awake, but in a different location. And that took me some time to grapple with. So I went to the library first and tried to figure out whether I had some brain seizure or some epileptic fit or something. I couldn't figure out what could possibly have triggered this event because I never heard of anything like that. And gradually, working my way through the library from the medical section to the psychology section, I then came to the parapsychology section, and I found a phenomena which was to do with the doppelganger, a German word for the double. And that sort of gave me a little bit of insight that there was a parapsychological phenomena which I hadn't known anything about. So from then on, I started reading more, and I came across a book by Carlos Castaneda, which was called A Separate Reality. And he, for the first time, detailed the experience which I had experienced. And then after that, I became really curious about it, and I wanted to have more of those experiences.
Now, this was the moment, this out-of-body experience, this happened in 1976, is that right?
That was 1973, the first
73.
one.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, after that, we moved to England. My wife and I were married then, and we moved back to England because she was from England. And then I took a really deep interest in the phenomena, and I started having more and more out-of-body experiences. And at that time, I also read a book by Robert Monroe, who, later created the Monroe Institute, where he taught people. And so Robert Monroe opened up the possibilities that, that were presented by such a rare occurrence. So I started getting more and more into it, and gradually more and more reality levels opened up for me.
Now, when you say more into it, well, first let's talk about this real quick. For people that are skeptics, you were a total materialist before this happened.
Yeah.
How did you feel that you were going to be able to explain this phenomena to a skeptic, or someone that just does not believe in this stuff? Did you even think it was possible?
No, I thought the only thing people responded when I mentioned it to anybody, they said, "Oh, well, you were just dreaming." I said, "No, I was totally awake. I was even more awake than I normally am. When I get up in the morning."
Right.
And nobody could explain it. I couldn't even explain it myself because it was a very, very weird phenomena. So there were very few people I could actually communicate with. So I kept it all secret. Instead of talking about it, I just kept a diary. And every time this event took place, I would record it and write it down in every detail in my diary, and there I left it. So yeah, it took about a chance. So I filled several diaries with these events. I have to say there was something else which happened, which made it more possible for me to get some such detailed reports, because I had one experience which lasted for 6 hours. Wow. I closed my eyes and I was almost instantly out of my body, and I was walking around in Bournemouth. We lived in Bournemouth at that time, and I was exploring the town, and the longer I stayed out of my body, the more vivid, the more awake I became. So much so that I feared that I may have died, and I was walking around in as a sort of dead person in a different reality. So in order to ensure that my body was still breathing, I went 3 times during the 6 hours. I went back to my body to check whether it was still breathing. And then, because the awareness was still so vivid, I went back to explore the environment. I went out into space. I did all sorts of things. I tested how I can move in this reality, how to communicate with people. And I had a really big, experience there. Now, the problem was when I came back in the morning, which was about 6 o'clock, about 90% of what I experienced gradually faded from my memory, and I was only able to hold on to about sort of 10% of what I experienced. So I started writing it all down in my diary, and from then on, I devised a method of memorizing it and bringing the experience in great detail back into my physical body. So this technique then helped me in the future to make very accurate recordings of the experiences.
And this is why you tell everyone, well, I was listening to a speech of yours and you said, look, I'm not here to be a guru. I'm just simply here to report this. I feel like I'm more of a reporter. Is that right?
Yes, I feel exactly. I mean, I'm not really interested in spiritual teaching. I'm not even really interested in out-of-body experiences, because my main interest has always been on meditation and exploring the higher states of consciousness, or the reality, the real reality, let's say, behind what appears to us. So that was always and still is my main interest. So yes, I just keep it quite private, really, but I kept up recording what I had experienced also in 2013, when I went to Scotland in a solitary retreat. I also started recording everything that went on in my meditation, so that people who started meditating, they would have some sort of reference point, to compare it, to see what happens during meditation. So yes, I very much see myself as a reporter.
Okay, so can we access the recording somehow, or is it?
Well, but whatever I recorded was through my books. The first one was Multidimensional Man, which I wrote in 2008. Then I went to Scotland. I went on a 1-week retreat, meditating. And there I recorded what I experienced, including an experience of cosmic consciousness. And then in 2015, the experiences I had, the out-of-body experience, became so powerful that I decided to write another book, which I called Vistas of Infinity. And the subtitle is How to Enjoy Life When You Are Dead. Now, the prime motivator for this book was when I had out-of-body experiences, I came to vast territories, let's say, of where people went when they died, and I realized how little people actually knew, and there were people in these territories who had who didn't even have an idea that they had died, and they were in a blind sort of state. Some of them were okay, they moved on, they acclimatized. A lot of things were done on the other side to help people adjust to their process. But to me, what became of paramount importance was to give people who are still alive an idea of what it is like to die and how you progress from then onwards. Because, we know very, very little about this process because we have only got 3 sources, really. The first one, I would say, are mediums and clairvoyants, people who can actually contact the higher states of consciousness, or let's say the higher frequencies where they can communicate with people who have passed on. Now, this is only all they do. They get second-hand information from the dead people. They are not actually in the place. They can only hear about it and communicate what people tell them. The second way of finding out about what's going on after you die is through people who have actually died and had a near-death experience. Now, that is the biggest amount of research that has been done because there was a number of scientists have been involved in recording these experiences and evaluating them. And that is where a lot of our information comes from. The only problem is that the experiences people have during near-death experience are usually very short, and they don't allow the experiencer enough time to take a look through all the different levels of reality and all the different phenomena. Very often they get into one state of consciousness, and then 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe half an hour later, they're catapulted back to their body. Their life is transformed, and they have trouble to integrate because most people who go through a near-death experience find it very hard. And what they then record is only a very small fragment of the whole picture. And the third group is the group I belong to, which is out-of-body experiences. And out-of-body experience, we are actually there in full waking consciousness. We can touch, we can feel, we can talk to people face to face. We can even go into their mind and experience what they experience. And that is a totally different world of, finding out about what happens on the after death levels. And that's what I have been doing.
I wanted to ask you about that a little more too. So, I spoke to Robert Bruce, and I've had one experience like the one that you're talking about. And he explained it like it's called the here and now. And you explain it like you were going around your town and 6 hours, man, that's impressive. I'm very jealous of that, by the way. I'd love to be able to do that. But I had an experience like that. And he said, well, the only way I could describe it is that it's empty. There are things in there, but you'll see astral travelers here and there, but it's a lot emptier than real life. Did it seem that way to you?
No, I would say that's almost the opposite, really, what I experience. The first thing I would say, everything that we can see here also exists on another reality level, on another energy level. And not just that, it exists on multiple dimensional levels.
Right.
And that was the first thing I experienced.
I'm talking about specifically, though, and we're up against a break, but I'm talking specifically about when you're out of the body and you're still kind of in this physical plane, you know, where you were talking about how real it seemed. And now you went and traveled in further places and further dimensions, right? But I'm talking about specifically that place. Did it seem empty to you at all?
The emptiness is a phenomena which people come across. The void is called the void, where there is nothing there. It's basically an empty space of consciousness. There's no phenomena happening at all.
Okay.
But you still have the experience that you're still there. You know, you don't disappear. You know, but I would say there is a specific phenomena which is not describing the whole of reality we can experience when we're out of the body. Gotcha.
Fantastic. Well, let's dig into the whole of reality when we come back after this break. Also, you could call in. It's 1-800-588-0335. We'll be right back.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Root, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheT.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheT.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheT.com.
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM.
So, have you heard of heavy metals? I'm not talking about the heavy metals in the junkyard. I'm talking about the heavy metals that build up in your body. Heavy metals in your body can make you feel sluggish, fatigued, and just plain off. Why not try Life Change Tea at GetTheT.com? Cleansing your body and making you feel great. No, not cleansing the outside of your body, but cleansing the inside of your body of intruders that sneak their way into you and set up an intruder camp. Life Change Tea helps remove unwanted intruder camps. Brew it, steep it, and drink in the results. Tastes great, so you can create a new health habit. Our tea loves to help people. It just needs the chance. So order yours today by logging on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Our Life Change Super Strength Tea is waiting. This could be a beautiful relationship. Take charge of your health. Order at GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com.
Alex. Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
We've heard your feedback loud and clear. You called it out, and now we're answering. All new live programming, 5 nights a week. Always remember, the Fringe FM is for you, the listener, and we appreciate your feedback. Keep the feedback coming. You can email us at talkback@thefringe.fm. Call the station at 501-777-5631, or send us a message on Facebook at The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
All right, everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, me old China plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Light in the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your north and south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you beat a Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to the Fringe FM, and visit the website thefringe.fm to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on the Fringe FM.
Howdy, this is Catalina, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
Well, we're still going down this road this week, and tonight we are talking with Jurgen Ziewe. Multidimensionalman.com is one of the websites we're going to use for reference, and I did drop the map or his diagram of the spheres of consciousness and reality into the Fringe FM chat. Also, I'll keep it in the show notes for the archive, but that's what fascinated me. And so right off the bat, I know people are going to ask, because they always ask this, Jurgen, is there a difference between OBEs, dreaming, and lucid dreaming? And from what I'm understanding that you're saying is it's all just different levels or something like that, right?
Yeah. Well, first thing I have to say is, of course, everybody dreams. You know, the only difference is people have more or less recall of their dreams. The more interest they take in their dreams, the more they remember their dreams in the morning. But they're still only dreams, and the dreams are usually generated by their unconscious, by the subconscious. They deal with metaphors of, for example, conflicts they had during the day. They may meet a fierce animal if they had a problem with their boss at work or something like that. So the dreams process all the things that go on in our daily life in order to create a state of equilibrium again when we get into the next day. Now, the next stage would be a lucid dream. Now, that is a very, very powerful phenomena, because then we become aware that we are dreaming. So there are a few people who became the vanguard of this phenomenon and explained it. One is Stephen LaBerge. The other one, who is a professor at, I think, Stanford University at that time, but I'm not sure. The other person who became very prolific in investigating this phenomena of lucid dream is Robert Wagner. Now, the big thing is this lucid dreaming. Not only do we dream, but we can manipulate our dreams. For example, if we see a monster, we can actually confront the monster and say to the monster, "Monster, what are you all about? Why are you frightening me?" And this way, the lucid dreamers can actually control their dreams and control the conflicts which the dreams sort of represent. But we are still in a dream state. But the other things lucid dreamers can do, they can do whatever they like to do, whatever their fantasy allows them to do. They can visit different worlds, alien species, they can fly, they can have sex, they can do, whatever comes into their minds. Now, the phenomena which I'm talking about and which I wrote about, it is out-of-body experience. And the majority of my out-of-body experiences I achieved via a lucid dream. And the way that happened was when I became lucid in my dream, instead of following my fantasy or doing things which I fancied doing, like flying and things like that, instead of doing that, I focused on my hands or I focused on the ground for quite a few moments until all the dream fantasy content disintegrated, evaporated. And then I found myself in a reality which was totally like our physical reality. I could touch things, which you also can do in a lucid dream, of course, but I could get up, walk around, meet other people. I could contact people of my family who had died. And then I realized that this is actually a parallel reality to our physical reality, because the fantasy element had totally gone, and I was in a reality in another dimension to our physical reality. And this, where things became really interesting. And this was the main point of my research, because I wanted to know more about the different layers of reality, the different dimensions. And that's why I then put all the recordings I made, which was of about 30 years. I put them all, compiled them all in my book, Multidimensional Man. That was a result of this.
So you do it differently than what I've experienced. So I tried to lay down, have the body vibration, roll out of body, the classic technique.
Yeah.
You've learned how to transition or become aware in a lucid dream and take it even further into a more out of body awareness, right?
Yes, different types of out of body phenomena, and there are different ways of accessing the out of body state. What you have done is a traditional method which you can learn, which William Buhlman teaches, and various other out of body explorers. They teach certain techniques which you can do. I was never really quite into this methodology because I was more interested in meditation, and meditation it takes you into quite a deep state of consciousness, and it also takes you into a much higher vibratory state of consciousness than the normal out-of-body experience would do. So I get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, I meditate for 1 or 2 hours, and because it's still very early, I then go back to bed, let's say about 5, 6, 7 o'clock, I go back to bed and go back to sleep. Now, because my consciousness is activated on a finer level, very often when I go into a dream state, the dreams become lucid and I become aware that I'm dreaming. And that sort of is for me the trigger to stop the dream, to disintegrate the dream content by focusing on the ground, on the gravel in front of me, to sit down, pick up a blade of grass, look at it, and then I'm totally clear, totally aware, and then I decide what I want to do, where I want to go, who I want to contact. Do I want to carry on meditation? I can when I'm in this state, very often I just carried on meditation, which took me into a higher dimension still, but not in the sitting in my chair, but in an out-of-body state meditation. And that was the reason why I was able to get into very, very high dimensional levels, which were almost impossible to describe, really.
Okay. So in this diagram, first I want to ask you about this place called the non-physical plane. Etheric energy, or the duplicate of the physical, coincides with the physical. Did you actually visit that place?
Yeah, that is actually the plane where most out-of-body experiences go, because it's a very Earth-like level and is very close to the Earth. And there's also the level very often dreamers go, because when we dream, we are having our dream content, our subconscious element, which are mixed up with the near physical level. So we are walking around in our dream through this higher dimensional level, thinking we are dreaming, but parts of it is actually quite real. And I observed dreamers when I was out of body, in my out-of-body state. I could observe the dreamers who were wandering around in these levels, and they looked a little bit like when you see people who are in a daydream. They're not quite there. They're still dealing with their own inner world, with their own fantasy.
Did you try to have conversations with them?
I did at some, I had some really interesting experiences when I interacted with dreamers. Recently, I went to a level. You have to bear in mind that there is an exact copy of our physical level on the next level, which very often people call the astral level.
That's where I went, just to let you know.
Yeah, that's it. It's exactly, you cannot tell the difference between the next astral level, which is a copy of the physical, and this level. And that's where most people go when they dream, and most people go first when they die, And that's why many people don't actually realize that they're dead, because there's no difference, Everything looks exactly the same. Even people who have been dead for a long time, they still would argue with you if you confront them. No, I'm not dead. Can't you see? Everything is still there, So I interacted with people, and I also interacted with the people who had died, like my mother, and various other relatives. But the interaction with dream people was quite good. Recently, I visited a couple who went through a divorce, and they had manifested their problems on the next level. You have to bear in mind that we create a copy of our thoughts, of our problems, in a kind of thought form which we solidify. So on the next level, for example, this couple lived in a house which was very rickety. It had big gaps in the walls, and the roof was falling down. Okay, so the house they lived in represented their marriage breaking down. So I went into this house, and I was fully aware, that this woman was dreaming, and she had created out of this conflict of hers this copy of her real house, which was this house which was falling to pieces. So I went into the house, and I started chatting to her, and I tried to give her some sense of clarity and some sense of energy which would help her to solve her marital problem. And I did that via an instant energy transference from the heart level. I sent her a lot of love, and with this love, I sent her also a higher energy which would give her clarity in her life. So that expressed itself very interestingly because I followed her. She had a few friends around in this dream of hers, and I followed her in the kitchen. And as soon as we came into the kitchen, we sank into the ground, which was like bog. And I said to her, "Look, do you see what's happening here? This is, all very unstable where you're in." She said, "Oh, that's just so the kids don't hurt their feet, And then I realized she was in this turmoil, in this anxiety and this anxiousness. And I then started transferring this energy to her. And as I did so, she cheered up, and the ground we were walking on became solid again. So that was a very interesting phenomenon.
Do you think she remembered this, though? Do you think this lady remembers this or remembers the experience?
Well, that's a curious thing. I didn't know who this lady were. It would have been really interesting, but I had my own insight from a higher perspective that when she woke up, she felt a lot more hopeful about it, because I told her she has to accept that her marriage is come to an end, and she has to look at it from a positive point of view and look at the future. In the other room, of course, I was also a little bit later dealing with her husband, who went through, of course, the equivalent of what she went through, So also I did a bit of work there. So I was trying to help as much as possible, injecting some higher frequency into their lives to help them cope with their terrible sort of trauma of their marriage,
Okay. I got you.
So, yeah.
Now, I know that these details might be a little boring for somebody like you that's exploring these places all the time, but I'm so curious about this. How do you know, like you said, you talked to your parents, you've helped this lady. How do you know that this is really happening, that this doesn't just, and this is kind of a paradox, but this isn't just like your imagination or something that you've made up? How do you know that this is real?
Well, the first thing is, of course, let's compare it with your normal life. You get up in the morning, you have breakfast, you go to the shops, you talk to the shop assistant, you buy a loaf of bread, and you walk away. How do you know that is real? You can't know. You only know you're fully awake. You're there, the person you're dealing with. You interact with a person. The person is an individual who's got his own character, which you couldn't possibly made up,
Right.
And that is exactly the same thing on the next level. I'm fully aware, fully conscious. Now, the different thing is between a lucid dream and an out-of-body experiences. In the lucid dream, there's usually some form of narrative running up, there's something happening. There are metaphors, there are things from your subconscious which are animated. There could be a dog with two heads running around, who knows. Any of these weird dream contents, they happen. Whereas when you are out of body, these sort of surreal elements, it can still look very surreal depending on which area you are in. But everything is much more realistic, The other thing which I make absolutely sure every time I have an out-of-body experience, the first thing I do, I establish here-now awareness, just the same as we do in our real life, in our waking life. We are here, we are now, we are thinking, we are an individual, we know who we are, we know what we want to do. And that's the first thing I establish when I have an out-of-body experience, to become aware of the here and now, make sure of my identity. And with this sort of modus in place, I then go around and explore the world. I go around to talk to people, talk to my mother. For example, I ask her what she has experienced, since she has died, and she tells me how she progresses. And then there are a lot of phenomena which are all detailed in both of my books, which are things which are totally real. They're not coming out of imagination or anything, you know. So that's the only way you can say, do you have here and now awareness? Are you absolutely sure of your waking identity? If these factors are met, then you know you're not imagining it. You're not in a dream world.
Okay. And so another thing I find interesting on your diagram, which is kind of scary, but I see it, that place that I went to is actually inside or maybe a lower level than what's next, which is showing like a lower dimensional negative hellish type plane.
Yes, that's a thing. The best way to describe it is if you look at our emotions, you know, for example, let's say we are anxious. When we are anxious in real life, we see usually things slightly dark, you know, that the sky is gray. Even if we look at the sunset, we rather focus on the clouds obscuring the sun rather than seeing the beautiful colors. You know, when we are depressed, we are not in a state of appreciating nice things. Now, when we die, let's say, and we are in this negative state, we also draw to ourselves negative things, dark things, you know, and because as a whole state of consciousness, people who are on a very negative level, they draw to themselves a very negative environment. For example, if you visit these levels, you will find there's very little light. Everything is quite dark, quite gray. You know, there are houses, they have no windows. People walk around in shabby clothes. They look worn and haggard. You know, they look old and decrepit sometimes if they're in a really bad state. They don't live in houses. They live in hovels, you know. And these are the reflections of their inner self, of their minds. And people who are in a more positive state of mind, they or the average person simply experiences their life as we do now, you know, with the good sides and the bad sides. But people who are in a more positive state of mind, they move or they are drawn into an environment which is very, very beautiful, you know, very lush with vegetation, very beautiful, very sunny. This is where the idea comes from of heaven,
right?
You know, heavenly worlds. And of course, it goes like our emotion. It goes to all sorts of levels where you can walk around in a state of ecstasy, if you like, you know, if that is an equivalent.
Do people get stuck in that state, though? Can they get stuck in the bad realms?
Yes, they can. If they are not motivated to aspire to something better, you know, and if they are addicted to their negative thoughts, you know, because, you know, there are people who just don't want to get out of their negative states of mind, who feel sorry for themselves, who feel resentful, who feel angry all the time, you know. These are the people who tend to get stuck there. It's basically my main sentence is, when people die, their inner world becomes their external reality.
Gotcha.
Okay, if you're a happy person, if you're well-adjusted, if you're positive, if you live through the heart, you live in a very beautiful, serene environment. If you're the opposite, you live in a very dark, dismal environment. And the only way to get out of that is with the help of others who sort of talk to you or give you energy, give you love, and sort of break the pattern you are in, and then they guide you out of it. Or you have an insight into your state and you think, oh, well, I'm bored with this now, I want to move on. And then you focus on something else, you know. And the interesting thing is, when you are in these darker regions, the moment you have this insight and this breakthrough, let's say you live in a very dark place, next to your hovel is a tree which has no leaves, you know, is totally bare. when this sort of change takes place within you, you see almost instantly the tree sort of sprouting green leaves, which is a phenomena which I've experienced. Suddenly things become a little bit better. They look better. And then you look at a leaf, or even you may find a flower sprouting from the ground, which is a reflection of your changing state of mind. And you think, oh, that's beautiful. And the moment this emotion comes up, suddenly other things start growing around you. So it can actually, if you have the right attitude, you can get out of this state very quickly, encouraged by the manifestation of your positive thoughts.
It sounds to me like a horror film almost. Did it when you saw this place though? Did it make you want to leave, or did it make you want to help people?
Well, there was one in my second book, Vistas of Infinity. I described a scene which was literally like out of a zombie movie. It was literally very horrible. So I had this out-of-body experience, and the first thing was, okay, the area I found myself in was very dark, and my first impulse was, okay, I've got to go to a higher level, to a more beautiful higher level. But then I noticed there was a group of people standing about 20 meters away from me, and they looked like zombies. They looked really hideous.
Oh,
and
man.
It was a very dark region.
I'll tell you what, before we get too deep into that, we're at the top of the hour. That's my fault. I started that whole conversation. Okay. So we'll take our break, but you saw this group of people that look like zombies. And look, folks, I mean, we got a long ways to go when it comes to his experiences on this. This is just the lower stuff here. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
And now we can get the information.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you?
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal, there's a show called Into the Paranormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Hear me live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern on the Fringe FM.
Introducing Shadow Light Tarot from Waking Canvas, the Fringe FM's new contributing artist, Eric Tesey. This hand-illustrated black and white self-published deck serves as a reinvention of the tarot, never before witnessed. Each of the several suits of this 88-card deck lineup form an infinite panoramic scene. Even the included visual visual companion guidebook is entirely hand-illustrated, cover to cover, with beautiful visuals and esoteric symbols and artwork. The newly released deck comes in a custom magnetic box with its own travel pouch. The Shadowlight Tarot Premium Deck and its travel-sized mini deck, Wonderlight Tarot, are both available now from WakingCanvas.com. If you use the code word FRINGE, that's FRINGE at checkout, you'll receive an extra 10% off your entire order. To discover more, including a free reading and time lapses of all the illustrated artwork, make your way over to WakingCanvas.com today. That's WakingCanvas.com.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails. Stores with their shelves strip bare. ATMs can't operate. Deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke. The system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
We've heard your feedback loud and clear. You called it out, and now we're answering. All new live programming, 5 nights a week. Always remember, the Fringe FM is for you, the listener, and we appreciate your feedback. Keep the feedback coming. You can email us at talkback@thefringe.fm, call the station at 501-777-5631, or send us a message on Facebook at The Fringe FM.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
All right, welcome back. Tonight we're speaking with Jurgen Ziewe, multidimensional traveler, author, conscious explorer, and conscious reporter. And before the break, we were talking about all the different realms in the out-of-body experience, or perhaps in reality and consciousness. And we started out in the, the earthly realms, or the I guess that's what it's called. And we ended up going into, and if you look at the graph now, just for anybody that's listening, you can go to multidimensionalman.com and you can see the graph there, but also put it in the Fringe FM chat. But you were telling us the story as before the break, and I had to cut it off there, that you were in this hellish type realm and you ran into what looked like a group of people that kind of look like zombies. I'll let you tell the story, though. I don't know it.
Yes, that was an interesting story, because my attention was drawn to a woman who literally, you pick up a zombie out of a movie, and she looked exactly like that, with the skin sort of flaking on her face, her hair falling out. She looked in a terrible state, but I felt drawn to her, and I felt very sorry for her. And I said, what happened to you? She said, well, I'm in a very bad dream, and I don't know how to get out of it. And while she was talking, I received the total download of her life, what she had experienced, and where she came from. She had died of a drug overdose, and she was a prostitute, and she had been really badly treated, and she got into a very, very negative, aggressive, resentful state of mind. And then she died of this drug overdose, and that's where she's told me, well, I'm dreaming, I'm having a nightmare, but I can't get out of this nightmare. So I touched her arm, and I said, look, I'm really sorry, but it's not a dream, you are dead. and she looked at me a bit startled. At the same time, I sort of held her and I gave her some energy, some positive energy. And I said, look, let's just talk a bit about this and come with me. So I took her on a walk and I explained to her what has happened to her, how she got to this place, and that she has to free herself of these negative things and take a bit of sort of heart energy and try to rekindle a more positive energy. All the time we walked, I sort of transmitted more and more positive energy to her. And we found that the darkness, we walked out of this darkness into the morning dawn, and things became brighter. And when I looked at her, her skin cleared up. She started looking like a normal person again, and she started cheering up. And as we walked further, we came to a park with beautiful trees and green grass, and we sat down on a bench and we talked a little bit more. By that time, she had totally regained her composure. She was a totally normal person. She looked beautiful again. And then I sort of left her. I left her at that. So to me, that was very important, because when we have negative experiences, we usually express them in subconsciously. They become a subconscious aspect of ourselves. And when we die, this subconscious impregnation of the negativity manifests in our external world and into our appearance. And that's where we either need help from other people like myself, who help people getting out of this state, or we have to do it ourselves, as I mentioned earlier. So that to me was a very important experience, because that's where I came to the conclusion that when we die, our inner world becomes our external reality, and that's basically the ground rule of life after death.
So it's a lot. It's a lot more important to think positively than we think. It's not just a cliche saying. I mean, I don't want to be stuck in that place after I die, Exactly.
That's why I wrote the second book, Vistas of Infinity, because I thought people need to know about this. They need to develop more positive aspects in themselves. They have to be mindful if they are suffering from resentment or hatred or anger, and I always sort of promote the attitude of the heart, before you think or before you become judgmental about something, first of all, go to your heart, feel with your heart, try to have a positive feeling. And what I sort of promote is for people when they wake up to wake up with a sense of gratitude, right. And that becomes gradually, that filters into your being, and that becomes a status quo later. If you wake up with goodwill right from the beginning, with a sense of gratitude or appreciation, if you nurture appreciation in your life and look at beautiful things rather than looking at the negative sides, you promote these positive aspects, and not only will your physical life become a lot more rewarding, much better, more fulfilling, but when you die, you have got everything to look forward to. Right. Then your real life starts, and that is a life of joy and pleasure.
So now when you go into meditation and you go into these realms, do you ever go back to the hellish realm? You don't even see it, don't even bother with it?
No, what happens now, because of my meditation, I no longer really identify myself with Jurgen Ziewe, the entity, everyday entity. What is happening now, I'm more identified with a higher aspect of myself, okay. Let's say my higher self. So this higher self decides what I'm going to do. And it may well send me into the lower realms in order to either report what's going on or help people, who are in there. But equally, it may send me to a very, very luminous, beautiful region,
So it's more like you're being directed by something.
Yes. Yes, I'm being directed by my higher self, by the flow, let's say, by the synchronicity, which takes charge of me and puts me into situation, into contact with people who may benefit from my help, or it puts me into contact with people who can teach me things, who can tell me things, who can show me things which I need to learn. And because I very much see myself as a reporter, I try to find out as much as possible of the different aspects of the afterlife, the real reality. I mean, the way I see it at the moment, we are just sort of exiles from our real world, our real home.
So before we get into that too deep, I want to still go through this. Now, I have to talk about this, and I have to ask, because I want to know how to deal with it when it happens. Robert Monroe talks about this, and I'm sure you've experienced it with the kind of like, the sexual aspect of things, something that you have to overcome and get past. Did you experience that where you felt those type of attractions, or you had, I guess, female energy forms or entities trying to connect with you like he talks about, or did you even experience that at all?
Well, yes. I mean, first of all, I'm not of the belief that sex is a negative thing, really.
Right.
In fact, I see sex as a very positive thing. Sex can lead to total liberation, if it's not seen as a way to control people or control things, or to be, just a negative way of self-expression, if you like, But sexual energy is fundamental in all human beings, so I don't see it as anything negative. So some people in this life, in this physical life, they have no opportunity to experience sex, either because they physically can't, or they don't have met the right match or anything like that, so they're frustrated. So the next level they go to when they die, they are put in a position where they can express their unexpressed desire to the full, so they will find a partner that's attracted to them, and depending on their attitudes, their body may resort into a prime state of vitality, so they not only become, let's say, they were sort of handicapped in some way, they now become vibrant people. And so there's the opportunity after they die to express all the unfulfilled desires they could never express in real life.
Right.
And that applies to all kinds of unexpressed wishes, because the astral level is basically, like the dream level, is basically a reality level which deals with our unexpressed wishes and wish fulfillment.
I got you. But what I'm specifically talking about, and I don't look at it as negative at all either, it's just that Robert Monroe, and I'm just curious about your experience with it, said that he couldn't, for some reason, he had to put it on hold or something to get past it because it was such a powerful influence, and he wanted to keep moving.
Yes, I had similar experiences. I had to, as soon as I came out of my body, I was accosted in a most sort of by three very beautiful ladies.
Oh,
and
wow.
They all wanted to have, yes, it was very, very tempting. But the other thing was, it also drew my attention into a field of sexual expression, which at that time in my real life I wasn't really interested in, and also it sapped a little bit of my energy and my free will, so I couldn't control what was happening, So as soon as the fear was, if I don't take charge of it, I will just end up in a dream. Okay, so these ladies, however pretty they were, They were not actually assisting me in taking advantage of the freedom which comes with an out-of-body experience.
They were trying to keep you there, right? Maybe.
Yeah. So basically, they're sapping this aspect of awareness from you, and then it becomes little more than a dream, kind of thing, experience. A very, very sort of pleasurable dream, if you like, but it's not something which allows you to liberate yourself from the lower mind, the lower states of emotion and sex drives, and go into states of liberation where you're totally free and at liberty to explore states of consciousness which you normally would never have the opportunity to explore. And that's what I think Robert Monroe was hinting at, that it can actually be something which you don't want to happen to you, when you have this sublime out-of-body state.
So how did you deal with it? Did you do like he did, where he told his mind, so to speak, and I might be wrong about this, but he told his mind, we'll do this later or something, and that allowed him to move on?
Yeah, exactly. You're telling the people in the politest possible way that you're not interested in that you have other things to do, and then you just move away from it, But there is this. What happens is really, in waking life, you have a certain amount of sexual energy you may not even be aware of, and then you have an out-of-body experience, and this sexual energy acts like a beacon, and it draws other energies towards you. And there you get, for example, you attract these females or males for women, And I know a lot of astral travelers I've communicated with over the years who actually seek the experience. I know of women who have actually astral lovers who visit them every time they have an out-of-body experience, So it's a totally, it's a really interesting subject, a big subject. So these people can express themselves, having an out-of-body experience, which they normally wouldn't be able to.
Gotcha. Okay. So you've moved past that, or you can move past that. Now, where do you end up next once you're past that?
Well, the next thing is you get into a higher state of consciousness, which is reflected in an environment which is of incredible richness and beauty. Let's say it's the most paradisical island you can imagine, the most paradisical mountain scene you can imagine. There's a profound nature in all its beautiful aspects at work. The people you meet, they are relaxed, they are communicative, they are positive, they're friendly. It's the ideal thing you can wish for in real life. It's the ultimate lottery win, if you like.
That sounds great.
Yeah, and this world then becomes incredibly rich, incredibly powerful. And also what happens when you get to these levels, your energy will have increased exponentially. So you are now in a position of materializing things and creating things which you were not able to do. On the lower levels, for example, it's very hard to fly. On the Earth-like level,
right,
which is a reflection of our Earth, you won't find people who are flying around.
Well,
Everybody's walking, because if you want to fly, it takes effort. Okay, it takes positive energy, and it's hard. I even tried flying myself, and I find, okay, sometimes I'm only hovering about 3 feet above the ground, and then, I stop. I have to walk. And even walking may not be that easy. If you're on a lower energy level. So the only way to overcome that is to have positive energy. to have an experience of joy, and that sort of catapults you into the air. Then you can fly when you have got this joy energy. Now on the higher levels which we are talking about now, these restrictions are removed from you. You are no longer limited by the negative energy. You're liberated. You can fly. You can do anything you want to do.
Okay, so the previous place on your graph is that the mental phase that you were talking about, the mental plane?
Well, that is still the astral plane,
sure.
Where people still have got their ego identification. I'm still Jurgen, you're still Joe. You have got all the identification still in place, identifying with your job, your family, your likes, your dislikes, and so on. That is still in place. You're still firmly identified with who you are, and that goes on for quite a while. Even you can even transcend that state, the state of wish fulfillment, the state of the ultimate lottery, lottery win, as I described it.
It gets higher than that. Fantastic. All right.
It goes higher. It goes then into a state of sublime joy, where your higher aspirations are met. Your artistic aspirations, let's say, your musical aspirations. And then you get to a level, for example, where you find for the first time, if you're a musician, you truly understand what music is all about. You can not only play the music perfectly without limitation, you can manifest the music from your mind directly into an orchestral score. And not only that, but you can see it in color and so on, So that is an even higher level, or if you're an artist, you can express it. But then after that, you can go into an even more exalted state of consciousness, and it becomes increasingly more difficult to be able to describe actually the environment then, because what then happens, this state is very often described as a second death. So what you do, your ego dies, your personal identification dies.
So I'm not really Joe anymore, and you're not really Jurgen.
Yeah, you're still you. You still have got a sense of self, but you're not identified so much with your preferences, with your likes, because suddenly a whole new universe opens up, and you suddenly think, oh God, my interests in such and such is rather small-minded. That has no relevance now. You opened a gateway to a potential which is a completely different state of consciousness, and you cannot relate anymore to your old self or the likes and your wishes and the wants of your old self, because something completely new has opened up for you. You had no idea could even exist, So suddenly you are confronted with a completely new life, completely new world, and a completely new self. One way of describing it, I go through these barriers often in my meditation. When not so much now, because I've permanently now in this state, so I don't have to go through the barrier of the second death anymore. So, but one of the experience was that you suddenly find the old self, the Jurgenness, suddenly becomes very small and very pedestrian. And you can see there's another aspect of you, a new you, okay? You can feel it, you can see it, it's waiting for you. And then you have to make the transition, and in meditation that often happens, you have to let it go. And then the new you is a different state of consciousness, which has none of the baggage of the old you have left behind. That can happen during meditation, or it can happen during an out-of-body state where you leave the lower aspect of yourself behind and then enter a completely new state of consciousness. You enter a completely new world.
And real quick, I got to say, though, this is so fascinating. And I hear a lot of people talk about letting go of the ego and coming into, contact with your higher self, but I speak to very few people that I actually think that have done it based on how they behave and act, right? How long did it take you to get to this point?
Well, the first time it happened was which triggered my depersonalization, and that was after 3 years of meditation. That was in 1973. We had this experience of being a light, okay? Then, of course, you have to come back to your old ego, and you have to deal with all the issues of the ego, the fears, the anxieties, your attachments. Yeah, it takes years, okay? And so I kept meditating. I kept having out-of-body experience. And then in 1980, I had the first breakthrough, which I described in Multidimensional Man, the first book. In the last chapter, I described how I went through all the different layers, different levels, until I came into the mental level. And that was brought about because I met during my out-of-body travels, I met a Chinese sage who trained me over several months how to access these higher levels. So I went into the out-of-body state. I met this Chinese sage who trained me, who communicated with me via symbols, who familiarized me with certain emotions, with certain feelings, and so on. And then about sort of 5-6 years later, I had this out-of-body experience where I went through all the levels, through the ego death, into the higher dimensional levels, and at the end I went to the pure light level again, merging with the self. Then I had to come back. I spent another sort of 25 years, trying to assimilate what I've learned, trying to integrate the experience. And then finally in 2013, I went onto a retreat in Scotland, lived in a little hut and just meditated all day long. And then on the 6th day, I had this experience, this final breakthrough where I united with my higher self, let's put it this way, where the higher self was no longer separate from me, something I would aspire to, I became it. I united with it. And that sort of broke the cycle of going back down again. And since then, I've been viewing everything from this level, from this here now level of reality.
Okay. So now, we have to go into our news break here, but now did you have helpers? Did you meet beings or entities that helped you along the way?
Yeah, after I met the Chinese guide, I didn't have any more helpers. I didn't need them, really.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I want to talk about that just a little bit more. We're already fascinating discussion. We're already halfway through the show. If you want to go to the website for the graph that I'm looking at, it's multidimensionalman.com. We'll be right back with Jurgen Ziewe.
This is Sammy. Join us in the Deep South as we're lighting the void with Joe Roop on the Fringe FM.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? Cannasense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. Cannasense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the cost, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will support supplant recreational perceptions, and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and CannaSense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
From Studio 401, it's the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on The Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt, and here's our headlines. The Ebola outbreak in the Congo is declared a global health emergency. The World Health Organization has issued the order. The virus has infected more than 2,500 people and has killed nearly 1,700. The year-old Ebola epidemic in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is now considered a global health emergency. The World Health Organization said on Wednesday, in a formal declaration that many public health experts called long overdue. This is still a regional emergency and by no way a global threat, said Robert Steffen of the University of Zurich, chairman of the World Health Organization Emergency Committee that recommended the declaration. The panel was persuaded by several factors that have made combating the epidemic more urgent in recent weeks. The disease reached Goma, a city of nearly 2 million people. The outbreak raged for a year. The virus has flared again in spots where it had once been contained, and the epidemic hot zone has geographically expanded in northeastern Congo near Rwanda and Uganda. Violence against the health workers has been a constant worry and has intensified after 2 Congolese workers were killed in their homes in Benai last week. Source, The New York Times. And a woman in Missouri says that she and her family have had a few encounters with a gorilla-like creature. The anonymous woman out of Crawford County told the BFRO that the sightings began back in 1991 and are still ongoing. The first time I saw it, I was driving home and coming around a curve when I noticed eye shine, she said. As I got closer, I saw a creature standing on the side of the road. The woman describes it as a 2-legged, 8-foot-tall creature with reddish-brown hair and weighing approximately 800 pounds. When the truck lights hit the thing, it covered its face with its arm. The eyewitness says her elderly mother also spotted the creature a few times. She would call me and tell me something was hitting her trailer very hard. One time, she added, her mother said that she heard the dogs barking outside, and when she came outside to investigate, she witnessed the creature talking to the dogs as though it was trying to calm them down. She stated that if an 800-pound gorilla could talk, that's probably what it would sound like. The last incident she recalls was last summer when she bought a night scope, and she and her husband went out on the front porch and sat down to watch the woods. This thing was standing there watching us as we were watching it. It was approximately 8 feet tall or a little taller and huge. Its arms hung down past its knees and kind of curved as a monkey's would. Its head was crowned to some degree. We passed the scope back and forth to each other. My husband couldn't believe what he was seeing. The woman says she never felt threatened by the alleged animal, and that out of the 4 times she and her family encountered it, only once she felt that she could have possibly misidentified it. If I hadn't seen it with my own 2 eyes, I'd be skeptical too, I suppose. Source, cryptozoologynews.com. And let's take a moment for an extremely disturbing fun fact. The Sour Toe cocktail is practically a rite of passage for visitors to Dawson City, Yukon. It's a simple drink, a shot of whiskey, usually Yukon Jack, with an unusual accompaniment, a mummified human toe. Thanks for listening to the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on the Fringe FM. Again, I'm Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer.
You're listening to the Fringe FM, and I'm Michael Deacon reminding you can find my show right here on the Fringe FM every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or by going to michaeldeacon.com. The choice is yours.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. Don't forget, the show's here for you Monday through Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific to midnight. Tomorrow night is our open lines night. I believe Jeff Harmon's going to be back with us. I'll have to check and make sure, but either way, those are the really fun nights. Then we got a whole round of guests coming back with you next week. So this goes on and on and on. And tonight we are here with Jurgen Ziewe. We're talking about his travels in the realms of consciousness, and I find this graph incredibly helpful. I don't know why I keep using it for reference on your website at Multidimensional Man, but it makes a lot of sense. And when I say this, I say it based on a lot of religious texts I've read, a lot of, you and I discussed this during the break, a lot of even spiritual or occult texts, you name it. They all have this. This is kind of like the underlying scale of everything, it seems.
Yes. People make different models of reality, to put it in some sort of context, which is really not easy. I mean, in the religions, they use metaphors like the Godheads. The Greeks had their own gods for every aspect of the psychology of the energies that are determining the other dimensions and things like that. So lots of people who have visited these places, they come back with some kind of a schemata or a model or a graph in order to get the mind to get a grasp of something which is really beyond mental grasp. So the one way of describing it as I have is breaking it down into states of consciousness. And you can see the states of consciousness perhaps as a layer where you can move from a negative state of consciousness, which is reflected in a dark environment or in a negative abysmal environment. Then you go to the normal state, which is very much reflected in the world as we live in now. And as your consciousness gets more sublime, more refined, more positive, more appreciative, you move into more exalted levels where everything is much more beautiful, more positive, you have more power, you have more ability to enjoy yourself and to think and to express yourself. And then you can move into even more and higher sublime states. So that would express itself in even more refined states of consciousness. Okay. And then you leave the state, which I described earlier as the ego death, where you move beyond that level and you become more in tune with who you really are. And for the out-of-body experience, the way they experience it, or the way I experience it, the higher you rise in your awareness, the more you feel you're closer to home. There's a home feeling of coming home. And the actual home feeling is a reunification with your higher self. There's the first time where you're not split into other things, where you're really united with who you really are. And that's a true state of consciousness. That is the base level of our being. That's where we're all rooted in, and that's where we're all yearning to get back to.
Well, I wanted to, how much of this remains a mystery to you? And I'll ask you this question because this is kind of a different example, but say like yesterday I was listening to another host on the network show, J.D. Lewis was speaking with an author that encountered, well, they spoke of an encounter that happened back, during King's Ages where people were visiting us. It seems like they came from parallel or other quantum dimensions, just some very weird, and the more I look into this, very weird accounts of things like that are actually noted in history. And I wonder if did you ever encounter people in these realms that had abilities like that? I mean, is this something that we can do? Will we be able to time travel, any of this stuff? Or was it all about just self-realization?
Well, the more I get into these areas, the more I realize how much of a beginner I am and how much I really need to still need to learn, and still need to explore, because it's really absolutely infinite. For example, there are things I've barely touched on, and what I wrote in my books, each chapter I wrote, I could write a whole book about each chapter, and there are so many aspects to it. It's literally infinite. I touched on, in my last book, Vistas of Infinity, I touched on alien species, on other civilizations which are beyond the reach of our solar system, and how these civilizations, how these species interact, how they work, their communities and stuff like that. Now, any one of these experiences could easily unfold into a whole library of other books, because once we breached the limitations of our physical self, we literally enter into a universe or into multiple universes which are absolutely infinite.
So when you come in contact with, and I'm assuming you have, with this higher self, and I've heard people call it the higher self, or I've heard things like the monad. I've heard things like the holy guardian angel, whatever you call it, right? When you come in contact with this, do you have abilities now that you didn't possess before?
Well, your abilities are usually focused on your core interests, let's say. For example, I'm interested in art. I'm an artist. So my contact is through the visual world. So I can look into realities with my eyes closed of different worlds, and they unfold in front of me simply by, I can do it now, by looking into these worlds. I can describe them. I can travel through them, simply by thinking about it. So these things also, they're different things which become more available to you. For example, there's one thing which I call the wisdom level or the knowing field. There are certain things which we would normally only describe as intuition. But instead of intuition, your higher sense of awareness simply knows certain things. They're not specific things as such, like what's the weather going to be like tomorrow.
Or what
They're
about like clairvoyance or telekinesis or stuff like that?
Yeah, I had the thing is, of course, I've never been really interested in these things, but spontaneously they sort of come about unexpectedly when I don't really, think about it. Right. For example, a friend of mine and I, we went 2 years ago. We went on a journey through Greece, trying to visit the ancient sites, spiritual sites, and I was trying to make a film about it. And we ended up in a monastery on Mount Athos in northern Greece, and we talked to the monks there. And that became a very interesting conversation because they have been meditating in their own way. The Catholic, Orthodox Catholic monks. And after speaking to one of the monks for a couple of days and discussing meditation, prayer, and what they're doing, their spiritual aspirations, he then said to me, because I was an artist, I was interested in the icons. He said, "I'll take you to one of our chapels. You can have a look at the icons." And he said, "Normally we don't allow visitors. They're only for the monks or for the initiates to visit these chapels." So we went into this chapel, and he sat me in front of an icon of the Madonna with a child. He lowered a chandelier, and the moment the light illuminated the icon, I had a profound experience of love coming from this Madonna, but it was more like a feminine energy which radiated out. And I was suddenly overcome with this incredible downpouring of love, so much so that I went into a kind of state of ecstasy, and I started crying.
Almost like you had an interaction with the Divine Mother, so to speak, or something of that nature.
Yes, that's how I experience it. I'm not a Catholic. I'm not even a Christian. So there was no religious background to it, which forced this. It was just like it acted like a metaphor or like a channel for me to access this divine feminine power,
Wow.
And then the monk saw it, and he sort of left me to it. My friend and the monk, they left the chapel until I sort of got hold of myself a little bit more. And then I thanked him. I said, "Thank you very much. That was not what I expected." And he said, "Oh, you may want to have a look at another of our paintings, And I said, "What? There's another chapel?" He said, "Yes.
These were Catholic monks?
Yes, they were Orthodox Catholic monks.
Interesting.
And it's a fantastic world. I mean, my friend, after we visited, he spent another week there. He was captivated by one of the monks who was a hermit who had been living in a little hut high up on the rocks for the last 40 years. And he was absolutely triggered, so he wouldn't come back with me afterwards. He stayed there for another week. But we went into the other chapel, and the same thing happened. This time he showed me an icon of a Catholic saint from the 4th century, and her name was Anastasia. She died. She was tortured and murdered by the Romans. And I looked at her icon, and the same thing happened again. The feminine energy sort of poured towards me. And it was so strong that the next day I wanted to go back into the chapel, but they wouldn't let me. The monk said, "Oh, no, you can't go in there. There's only for us," And I sort of somehow persuaded them. After I got help from another monk, I went back into the chapel and I meditated in front of this icon for about an hour. And suddenly I had the presence of this saint right in front of me. I couldn't see her, but I felt her presence, like if somebody comes into the room. And she very clearly told me, "I am still alive," And with that feeling, I got this incredible download of positive feminine energy again. And from then on, I only had to think about her, and she was with me. She was like somebody walking next to me, but I couldn't see her visually, but I could feel her presence. And every time that happened, I had this very powerful love type of experience burning through my heart.
I've always wondered about that, why monks take on that life. I think I'm starting to understand it. I have a monastery down the road from me that is way, I mean, you can see it from the road. It's way back off into the woods behind a lake. The lake is only 3 foot all the way across. It looks kind of creepy, honestly. And I've heard them, I guess maybe chanting or something at one night out there. And I've always wondered why they take on that life. But I guess based on what you're telling me, I could kind of understand why now.
Yes. Of course, my friend who stayed there, since we came back, every 3 months he has to go into a monastery. He was absolutely addicted to the sort of atmosphere and I'm not like that, but he always goes back to these places and prays and meditates with these monks, and he gets a lot out of it. And also he likes to visit churches because they're full of this energy. He's also been meditating for the last 20 years, and he is very sensitive to the energies of places. So he goes into these churches and he can access this energy and the whole feeling. And this is what I was told when the monks paint these icons. They spend a whole year or 2 years, every brushstroke they paint is a prayer, So they use a full mindfulness and meditation to make the picture as beautiful as possible. And of course, this energy is sort of encapsulated in this painting, and you can feel it.
That's fascinating. Because I do too. I had people actually stop listening to the show one time because I said that when I go into a Catholic church, I get a divine feeling, and I've been into a few of them, not all of them, but a few have given me that feeling. And, I know they get a lot of stigmas and a lot of things have happened in the church too that are very bad, but that's everywhere. But I think like the general message in a lot of different religions come from a divine source, I'm starting to think.
Yes, that's the thing really, because every religion has got the source in the divine at some stage. What is happening is people don't find the connection to the source. They get stuck in the dogma. They get stuck in the external teaching, and they become very often bigoted because they give more credence to their interpretation of what the scripture says, rather than getting beyond what the scripture says and into the heart of what the original text said, And this is where the problem lies. That people don't understand their own religion. They think they do. They say things like, "Oh, well, I'm preaching the word of God." But no, they don't. You can't preach the word of God until you have totally experienced it, until you have heard it from the horse's mouth, not from reading a book. There's a big difference. And that's why it is good to, these places like churches, they have got a certain amount of energy, of even spiritual energy, but they're still not the pure thing, you still have to walk the extra mile to go inside, to connect to your own inner divinity, and that's,
Is there a religion or a practice that you think that connects with you better than like Buddhism per se, or is it just kind of like, you just do meditation and it takes you where it goes?
Well, the thing is, I personally, I have always been not a very religious person because my father was an atheist, my mother was a Christian. There was a sort of kind of Sunday school aspect to it. My mother taught me how to pray when I was a child. My father had a very bad experience with the church or with his religion, and he was an atheist. So I was sort of in a kind of no man's land. I did study the Eastern philosophies, the Upanishads. I did read them, the Tao Te Ching,
right.
The Chinese philosophies. I did practice Qigong at one stage. I did a lot of research in these things, but I only went as far as my inner self sort of connected to it. And inevitably, in the end, it was only possible for me to go to my inner self. Now, one thing which is quite interesting is after I had the first experience in 1973, this sort of a kind of light experience, after that I had the feeling, I had a contact with my higher self, which manifested in a way which I refer to as my silent companion. You know, there was an aspect of awareness I was aware of that was always with me, you know, which I called my silent companion. And I would turn to this aspect of higher awareness when I wanted to find guidance, you know. And that sort of stayed with me until 2013, where I finally united with this silent companion and we became one and the same thing.
So it took a lot of years and a lot of work and a lot of inner work for you to get to this point.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what keeps us, like for me, like I want to have more transcendental or out of body experiences like I had that one time? I think a lot of people do. Do you think it's just the fact that we don't do it regularly, like we don't do the work enough? Or what causes us to not be able to do these things?
I think we are sidetracked by our senses, you know, our visual input, what is going around in the world. We are addicted to the news media, especially now with the internet. We have become victim to sensory input rather than finding our input through our inner self, you know, by directing attention towards the being state. If we were to focus on actually what is our here now awareness, you know, then we would quite easily find a connection again to our higher self, to our inner self. And it doesn't need a lot of prayer or anything. It just needs meditation. We just have to sit still and feel the itness, what actually is, without any attributes or any description. So just being in the here and now and feel. I always feel it using the heart, feel what is, rather than think about it, you know. And it doesn't take a lot of time. We can just do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. Well, look, we're up to the top of the hour again. I mean, this flying by just like last night. If you got, I will get into the chat room if you got any questions, but you know, the callers will take precedence. If you do call in, it's 1-800-588-0335. We'll be right back.
Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to the Fringe FM and visit the website thefringe.fm to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on the Fringe FM.
Every Saturday at midnight here on the Fringe FM, you can join me, Stephen Canby, the host of the Midnight Hour Show. On my show, we explore paranormal topics with a skeptical view. We search for evidence. We search for proof. We search for the truth. Because who better than me, my friends, a magician, a man trained in the art of deception and misdirection? Who better than me to investigate for you some of the greatest mysteries on planet Earth? And I hope you will join me every Saturday night here on the Fringe FM at midnight Eastern Standard Time for the Midnight Hour Show, 9 p.m. Pacific. I want you to join me here every Saturday night at midnight for an incredible journey. Consider yourself invited. Brand new episodes of The Midnight Hour Show, available exclusively every Saturday night here on the Fringe FM. Consider yourself invited.
Join us on Hey Google, I would like to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us, but I don't have time to read or go to school because I work all the time. What do you recommend?
Try listening to Lighting the Void. It's the best way to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us. Besides, I happen to think Joe Roop is the most handsome voice in radio. Listen Monday through Friday 9 p.m. till midnight Pacific time on the Fringe FM. Plus, you will hear a bonus feature called The Stranger Than Fiction News, reported by Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer. With all this information in one location, you are guaranteed to be more attractive to others in your social circle because you'll beam with intellectual wisdom.
I think I'll try that.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM.
Okay, here we go. AncientLifeOil.com. AncientLifeOil.com. Now this is for CBD. AncientLifeOil.com. Again, for CBD. Where do I get CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. It's pretty good stuff. Organic, non-GMO. We are the Ferrari of CBDs. AncientLifeOil.com. You know, they say when you mention a person's name 3 times when you first meet, that you're going to remember. So I'd say to you, nice to meet you, AncientLifeOil.com. It's AncientLifeOil.com, right? Nice to know that you help people. AncientLifeOil.com. Think about this. Occasional stress, occasional anxiety, occasional inflammation, occasional stiffness, and intruders that get you down. AncientLifeOil.com. Okay, so I'm going to give you a fact for the day. So Ancient Life Oil does not help you with business deals. Hold on a second. If you feel better, it could help you make a better decision. Okay, I'm wrong. Just remember to go to AncientLifeOil.com.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
Well, I tell you, this has to be the week of total consciousness exploration. I mean, just back to back. This has been really, really fun. And tonight, we're here with, I guess you could say, conscious reporter, Jurgen Ziewe, also an author. Multidimensionalman.com is the website, as well as the 10-minute moment. That's something I wanted to talk to you about, the 10-minute moment. And there's something that you're trying to express to folks about concentration. And I don't know if I fully understand it. I mean, I understand the idea of concentration, but what are you saying about that? Like, if we're able to concentrate on what and for how long, and what does it do for us?
Yes, the thing is with meditation, there are so many techniques which are taught by people, teachers, it's literally limitless. The idea is to hold your awareness, to hold your attention on one object in order to be able to get rid of the stream of thoughts which continuously distract us from making contact with our inner self and the place where we find the root of our being, the root of our consciousness or our divinity, like some people call it. Now, there are thousands of books on how to meditate, but the thing is, it's no use getting a book and slavishly following the what's written in it. There has to be an element of connection there. You have to actually like meditation. If you don't like it, it becomes a chore. And it's not supposed to be a chore. It's supposed to be something you enjoy, you get into, which gives you a relief, which gives you inspiration. That is not always easy because most of the time we spend following our thoughts, creating our shopping list. When we close our eyes and think we are meditating, we are just so preoccupied with our subconscious, our awareness, that we find it very hard to get a grip on it. So we sometimes say, "Oh, I just stop it. I'm not very good at it," and things like that. But even if you sit down and allow your stream of thoughts to unfold, you're doing already one thing. You're giving attention to your inner life, to your inner self, because the thoughts are there for a reason. So in a way, there's already a form of meditation. But the thing is, what I say, if you do it for a while, you find a method which works. And I always there are several meditation techniques which I like, and I tell people about it. One is to just simply focus attention on one thing only, and that could just be the breath, The idea is to become mindfully aware of what is. That is the best form of meditation, to be aware of what is taking place. And the best way to get into meditation is to be aware of what you do naturally, which is breathing. So if you follow your breath and pay attention to your breath of the in and out, that is a form of meditation, which will also calm you down. And if you do that for a while, and if you do it with interest, or engaging your heart, liking it as you're doing it and enjoying it, that is a form of meditation. If you do it for 5-10 minutes every morning, that is already very, very good, and you will feel the benefits within a few months if you do it regularly.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. I want to go back to the graph here. You talk about this place that on rare occasions that you would enter a state of consciousness, which you say only can be described as a singularity, where everything around you becomes you, I guess. Where you, I know it sounds kind of cliche, but it also sounds kind of cool. I mean, can you describe it for me at all?
Yes, what I've done with my meditation, for example, when I experimented in Scotland, I discovered that the best way of meditation is, let's say, if you focus on what many people say, focus on a light inside your head or something. Rather than focusing on a light inside your head, I focus on being the light, being the light, identifying with the light. So you don't focus on an object that is separated from you, but you are the object. And if it is a light you focus on, you become the light. You see the world from the perspective of the light. Or if you focus on your breath, for example, you become the breath. You unite with the breath, because ultimately what we see is basically what we are. So the mindfulness meditation, which has become so popular, consists in the fact that you totally identify with what you experience. You identify with your experience. If you walk, if you go through the park, you focus on the walk. You feel every step. You feel the feet touching the ground. You do the next step, and you're totally one with what you're doing, with your activity. If you're doing the dishes, you wash up, you wipe the dishes, you do it consciously and you feel it. You could even go a step further and feel it from the position of the plate which you clean. How does a plate feel? Does it feel good? Is this sort of kind of shifting awareness from the interpretation of the world to the awareness of the world itself? The ultimate aim of meditation is what you mentioned earlier, is the singularity, the feeling that there is no outside world, that what I am living in is actually who I am. I am the world. There is no difference between what I see and what I am, because the person who sees is only an arbitrary thing which we made up out of habit, because we relate everything to our pleasure, to our ambition and everything. But there's a state in consciousness where this self, this individualized self, is not limited to the body anymore. It becomes everything. And that is the experience of singularity. When this state of consciousness is reached, that is accompanied by an incredible feeling of well-being, of love. So you wherever you walk, it's like walking in the extension of your living room. You're always at home. And that is the singularity. That's the ultimate goal of meditation, to live in a world which is whole, where we are no longer alienated, where we no longer experience the world as an outside alienated thing from ourselves, but we are one with it.
And is this where you try to go often, more than you do?
Well, I'm always in there now, okay. Even when we speak, because that is to me, there is no such thing as an outside world. It's all one environment. It's always one being. I'm always sort of in tune with what's going on. Of course, there are interruptions which take place. Let's say there's a car crash or something, right. Or somebody wants something from you. You get out into the thinking mode, into the action mode, but on the ground level, you're still rooted in it. You're still finding your way instantly back into it. And your action is informed by this experience. So you wouldn't, let's say, somebody cuts you up in the traffic, you wouldn't automatically get angry. You would just sort of see something has happened and you don't take it personally or something, So instead of being provoked into an action, you're more like seeing it from the other person's point of view who cut you up. So you don't feel affected or attacked.
I got to tell you, I do that a lot actually, but people call that passive aggressiveness. They're like, that's what they call it. You don't care. Like they want you to get so upset about stuff. And it's like, I understand where you're coming from, or you're just being passive aggressive. I say, okay, whatever.
It's a form of meditation, not to be affected. For example, at that moment where somebody comes across to you in an aggressive way, you have the opportunity to say, who is he aggressive to? What is he aggressive at? And you can sort of almost look at your shoulder, wondering where the person might be that he is aggressive to, So you learn not to be affected by taking the opportunity of an assault or an attack, taking it as an opportunity to learn that it is not you who is affected. And that's a form of mindfulness. It's a form of mindfulness meditation, that we take whatever happens in our life as an opportunity to learn who we are. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I am with you on that, actually. And I've practiced meditation for a long time. Maybe that's where it comes from. But the out-of-body experience is something I just am fascinated with. And again, back to your graph here, on the levels that you're showing, and I'm just going to speak esoterically here, you have astral, mental, causal, spiritual, and reality. That's the spiritual equivalent of what you call them, or the esoteric equivalent. At the very top, you have reality, and above that, you have unknown. What does that mean? Like this reality, or is it ultimate reality that we just don't know about?
Well, when we get to the aspect of our unity, of the singularity of who we are, that is the point where we start becoming actually human. That is, I find, is the ground level of our humanity. That's where all the positive aspirations spring from our sense for liberation, for liberty, for fairness, for justice, for love, all the things which are anchored in the human rights precept. They're all coming from this realization that we are all one. There's no you and me. We are all made from the same stuff. We are all human. That is a basic human level. Now, when we reach this kind of awareness where we live in the singularity of ourselves, then our daily life is a process of being mindful. The way I describe it is we are continuously walking in the garden of God, if you like, if you want to use the word God. Everyday life is walking in the garden. We are all in a state of harmony, of oneness. We see everything from a very natural, very reasonable, sensible perspective. We are not deluded by other people's ideas and things like that, or our own prejudices, But the singularity of the humanness is only, to me, there's only the ground, the base level of consciousness. When we get to that point, the big question is, what is after that? What is the bigger picture? And that is the big mystery. We don't know. We don't know what lies beyond it, And the thing is, my feeling is, or my appreciation is, that from then on, a totally new hierarchy of experience may open up to us once we reach this point as a human species. But I don't think very many of us have actually reached that point, have gone there. And I'm certainly not one who can sort of come back and report from these aspects. But I know it goes on, and it goes much further than we are able to experience as human beings at the moment.
Okay, so if I understand what you're saying correctly, you've seen all these different planes of existence and consciousness in the out-of-body experience, in the lucid experience, but there's a barrier that for some reason none of us can pass until we all get to that point. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we don't actually experience it as a barrier, because when we get to this point, the experience is one of absolute liberation, of freedom, of consciousness, of living in a state of unity. Okay? Now, this is a state which is impossible to describe, because it needs to be experienced. It's almost like saying trying to explain to a blind person the color red. He won't be able to grasp it, because it's a state of consciousness. And once we have reached the state of consciousness, there are two things that can happen. We can either reside in this state of consciousness, or we want to assist other people in helping them to acquire this state or enter this state of consciousness. And these are the people in the Eastern philosophy. They're referred to as a bodhisattvas. They're going back into the world and trying to help as many people to reach their prime level of humanity in order to become part of the whole thing, a conscious part of the whole creation process. That's a big thing. What happens from then on is anybody's guess, really.
Yeah, right. I can hear the seagulls in the background. This sounds beautiful, man. It sounds like you're on the beach.
Yes, it's a very beautiful day, morning, and not far from the beach.
It looks like we got a caller from 778 area code. You're on the air. Do you have a question for Jurgen?
Hey, I do.
All right, who are we speaking with? Yeah, we can hear you.
It's Corey from Vancouver again.
Hey, Corey, what's on your mind?
Not much. Good morning, Mr. Jurgen. Just a quick question. Earlier, you mentioned that there's obviously different levels of like astral and of the dream state when you're lucid. I'm just wondering, what would be the archetype? Like you said that when you dream, we go to this other world, and you can see these astral projections or the astral walkers. I'm just wondering, like, who's creating this area that you can go to and they can go to, and you experience the same thing?
But if I understand your question right, what kind of people are there?
Yeah, who's creating the area?
Another thing you mentioned was that there's like not a mirrored image, but like an exact same reality where dead people don't even know that they're dead. I'm just wondering, like, who creates that, and is it the same? Like, if someone died in the 1900s, like, how can they interact with people who have died in like the 2000s? I'm just wondering. I know it's a pretty basic question, but
I get it. That is really the key question you just said, because what is happening? What kind of reality do people who died 100 years ago live in, and what do they mix with people who died in this reality, or are they still in the 19th century reality? And that is the thing about the multi-dimensional aspect of reality, So you find a hair's breadth away, you find all these different reality levels, and they're all created by ourselves, and they are created on a consensus level. So you may find all the 19th century people still walking around in their Victorian outfit, in their Victorian environment, because the multidimensional levels are not really packed on top of each other. They are also stacked against each other. There is a bit like one picture that comes to my mind. Reality is like a sponge, where each bubble in the sponge is another reality, is another environment, is another era, So you can find a section of London, for example, which is in the 18th century, in the 15th century, or in the 20th or 21st century, literally side by side. And it only needs a shift in consciousness, in awareness, to visit one reality level or the next one. Tom Campbell is interesting. He looks at it as a virtual world where everything becomes alive the moment we focus our attention on it with our experiences and so on. And I found in my book, Multidimensional Man, the way I try to explain it is everything is data. And what we do, for example, when we want to create something, we connect to the data which is already stored. For example, if we want to have a cup of tea, we just connect to the data, and we have in our hands, we have a cup of tea, which already exists. And our physical level sort of determines the existence of our physical level, determines the existence of the data set which we access when we are out of body. So we are recreating the data set which is already there, but by our focus of attention, we enter into this data set. And this is infinite. They're multidimensional levels to reality. That is the biggest thing, which is so hard to understand.
So you're saying that to his question, that it's like a consensus reality that we create ourselves, these different levels. Yes, we create these levels. The people who lived in the 16th century, they created their level, okay, and that becomes available to us by our focus. So in my out-of-body experience, which I documented in my first book, I visited past lives. Okay. Oh, really? Okay.
So what I did was I just accessed the data level, and I was actually in it with the same powerful awareness as I'm sitting here now talking to you, being aware of where I'm sitting and what's happening around me. I was catapulted into this medieval time. I could study what the people were wearing, the clothes they had, what they looked like, what the weather was like, even what they were thinking. So I went into the consensus reality of that time I was living in, and I entered the data set as it happened at that time.
Does that help your question, Corey, at all?
I think that just opened up more.
Yeah, just it's like it opens up more questions, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm gonna have to buy his book for sure. I could be here all night. I'm just gonna.
Well, go ahead. You can ask another question. We got a couple of minutes till break.
Okay. For past lives, I don't have anything in front of me to kind of grasp. So you're saying you experienced your own past life?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so Robert Monroe talked about that too. I always wondered how he got to that point.
Does your part of your consciousness stay in that era, and you just keep growing? Like, how does that? Like, how do you explain that?
Well, the way
sorry.
Yeah, the way I explain it, there was one experience in particular where I saw myself not in terms of a physical body, let's say, which had a sort of identity. I saw myself as energy centers, a bit like a three-dimensional spider's web, which had connecting points. And at each point, there was a past life or a potential of a life. They were all energy centers, and the whole of it made up who I was. And when I focused in on any one of these energy centers, any one of these experiences I had in the past, I was literally there when it happened. I was still conscious that I was sitting there in meditation, but I was simultaneously experiencing what I experienced in the past life, including the memory I had, including the awareness that I had a family and children, including the feelings I had. I was literally there. I had dual consciousness,
Right.
And sometimes when people do regression, they don't get quite as far as that, but they get images of these past lives, But when you have an out-of-body experience, you can actually enter the data set and re-experience it in every detail.
Okay. We got to go into our last break here. We only got a few more minutes. Thanks for your call, Corey. Fantastic questions. I think that, again, you're being a reporter, right? That's what you're doing. Like, some of the stuff is hard to explain, but you're definitely doing it just like a reporter would. That's what it sounds like to me, and I love it. We'll be right back with Jurgen Ziewe.
It's a real challenge to sometimes put it into
Be right back.
This is Vance Nesbitt. Take the time to expand your mind by listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop right here on the Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Hi, this is Kronox from Belgium, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Right, me old Chiners. I know it's an ad break, but before you lot shoot off and make yourself a cup of Rosie Lee or whatever else it is you're going to sling down your Gregory Peck, you need to listen to me babble. If, like me, you found your way to Lighting the Void via a downloadable podcast, you might want to take a butcher's at the Fringe FM Wind and Kite. You won't Adam and Eve how many other shows there are or what they rabbit on about. Ancient history, conspiracy, the consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, metaphysics, parapolitical, ufology, technology and spirituality, to name but a few. They got featured hosts like Ryan Gable, Jeremy Scott, Alex Exum, Tim Doyle, Cortana and Gigi, Susanna Ross, the Reverend John Polk, Michael Deacon and J.D. Lewis. You might find yourself listening to the thoughts and theories of the author of The Fish you just finished reading. Or you could pick up the dog and bone, call in and tell everyone your own beliefs or experiences. So do me a favour, before you put on the Ansel or crack open a bottle of vino or roll a joint, go to the Fringe FM and see what you're missing.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
I like to listen to Lighting the Void because of the guests, the content, and the host, Joe Roop. He's smart, he's intelligent, and he seems to ask the questions that we all have on our mind. We're all searching for the truth, and Joe helps us get closer to it. I love this show. I love this show. I love this show. Lighting the Void.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Yeah, I'm glad that Corey called in and asked that question. You can call in too. It's 1-800-588-0335 if you want to call in and ask any questions to our guest tonight, Mr. Jurgen Ziewe, who is the author of The Multidimensional Man, as well as, well, you're an artist too, right? You like to do art. Are you trying to learn how to do the art that you saw the monks do? Is that what you're tapping into, where you can actually go into those realms, come back, and then paint it in artwork?
Well, the thing was, I'm a commercial illustrator by profession, and I've started in the late 80s, early 90s using computer 3D programs to do my illustrations, and that's how I became a commercial illustrator, being represented by an agent doing commercial work, but also it gave me the tools to express much better the things which I experienced when I was out of body. And I visited some of these incredible sceneries, which are almost impossible to describe So I used pictures to describe them. Very interesting things happened in computer technology, for example, when people discovered the Mandelbrot set. The Mandelbrot graphics, they are able to express creations which are very, very similar to features on the higher planes, where thought energy manifests in terms of shape, design, color, motion, and some of these fractals that are 3D fractals that are generated are very, very similar to the higher dimensional.
So you're the one that's programming all of us and making us slaves. That's you, huh? No.
No, I mean, but I'm really fascinated by how technology is probing into the unconscious now.
Right.
It's a new kind of narrative we are creating, like the modern King Arthur is the Marvel comics. They're creating the archetypes, which come out of the modern archetypes, which are coming out of our subconscious. And I'm really interested in the movies that are created. Also, I don't play them, but I buy computer games. I've got a PlayStation, and I'm fascinated by the graphics and think about where they come from. Unfortunately, I'm not very good at playing games.
You're a gamer, Jurgen? I never pictured you to be a gamer.
I'm only looking at the visuals, really, because I use the graphics. But I can't play. I'm not very good at playing the games. I'm not fast enough, really. I'm 72 now. But I'm interested. I'm interested in what the culture at the moment, sort of what they bring into existence. And some of the games which have been created, they come straight from the astral level, which I've visited, and that's fascinating to me.
I want to ask you about that too, because and I'm about to spoil a TV show, by the way, but I got to ask. So there's this show that I'm fascinated with called Strange Angel, and it's about Crowley and Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard's great show, fascinating show. But anyways, Crowley shows up to Jack Parsons, and it turns out it's just astral projection. Now, you wouldn't think that's entirely too wild. Can I project myself somewhere else into someone else's mind or reality? But Robert Monroe talked about this in his book, how a little child saw him when others didn't, and things like that. In the Eastern text, they talk about how they can astral project themselves to someone's bedroom if they want to and say hello. Do you subscribe to this? Is this possible?
Yes, I have. I have encountered kids who saw me as ghosts, and who ran away when I was astrally projecting. I projected once into a room where there was a clairvoyant session going on, and the clairvoyant saw me. Quite literally, and she asked, was I her guide? I said, no, I'm just passing by, and things like that do happen. I've popped up in people's dreams, and there's literally no limit of what can be done, through astral projection. I mean,
you do know that scares people, though, right? I mean, like, look, if Jurgen can do it, then what about like magicians or magi or monks or black magicians? Can they come into my dreams, into my reality, and program my mind and stuff, right? There's people that are afraid of that.
Yeah, there are limitations, though. They're dictated by the inner consciousness of a person. You have to be open. You have to be vulnerable to it, otherwise people have no control over what they do interfering with you. There are certain safeguards which are dictated by the inner chemistry of your mind, of your consciousness, so certain people will have no influence, can have no influence of you unless you are predisposed to that influence. So, for example, if you take, voodoo or something, voodoo will only work to certain people who have got vulnerability to being affected by magic or something like that. It won't work on person who doesn't have this vulnerability, no matter what people say, So there's to be a congruence at work for it to be actually possible. So I may not be, if somebody said to me, can you project into my bedroom and tell me what is on my wall and so on. There have to be various factors which make it possible. First of all, I have to have an interest in it. If the interest is not on the base level, I probably fail. I did one interesting experiment with my brother where I asked him to put a note on the wall and I would go over and read it, and it didn't turn out the way we expected, but I was still able to access his mind remotely.
Wow. Yeah. See, that's incredible to me. I'm not so much afraid of it per se. It's just, I want to know what can happen or be aware of it. And that's why a lot of people talk about protection and things. And we've talked about this kind of thing, but you yourself, you've never ran into, let's say, a dark magician or a black magician. Have you ever ran into anybody that you saw doing some type of work in the astral realm?
I've never run into anybody who tried to sort of harm me or tried to be nasty or something. In a couple of occasions, there were sort of brushes with energies which were slightly unpleasant, let's say, which I documented also in my first book. But generally speaking, you're pretty safe when you have an out-of-body experience. Somehow, when you have an out-of-body experience, you somehow rely on higher energies, which assess you. When you're already in that state of consciousness, which allows you to have an out-of-body experience, you almost automatically align yourself to higher energies in a positive way, which will be there on call to protect you or to be with you and make sure you are okay, really. For example, when I started off, I suddenly found my energy was dropping and I wanted to fly. And the moment I thought about it, somebody was laughing behind me and gave me a mighty push. So I was flying high up in the sky simply because I was thinking about it. So there's always an aspect of consciousness, which is either another individual or some other higher aspect, which will always be with you. So you're always safe. That's the way I experience it. Anyway.
Well, if you think about what you said earlier, especially like the hellish realms or whatever, and you think about how people take their beliefs, I think we need to be afraid of what we become, or we need to be aware of what we become afraid of. Like when I read Monroe's books, and I'm sure when I read your book, there'll be accounts of this probably too, where people, just would look at Robert and say, well, you're a demon to take me to hell, or you're some type of entity. And he's like, no, it's just me. But that's what they saw. It's almost like they took their fears into that realm with them.
Yeah, the thing which is the greatest obstacle in this life, in any life, in out-of-body experience is fear. Fear is the greatest obstacle, and fear is an illusion. The fear, once you overcome the fear, and then that's always also the point where I agree with Tom Campbell. The fear is the greatest obstacle in life generally, and also in out-of-body experiences. The moment you overcome the fear aspect, and I've been trained when I had my out-of-body experience to face fear, to overcome fear. When the fear level drops away, your life becomes an open, beautiful experience, even when you're in circumstances which are negative, like you are sick, or you have cancer like I had, the fear element simply is not there, so you do go through the treatment of your illness like you go through any other experience in your waking life without the fear element. And that makes a huge difference to your life and also to your well-being.
So you had cancer? I didn't know that. So you had, did you do chemo or how did you?
No, I had an operation. I was diagnosed with cancer out of the blue in 2011. and that was really quite interesting because it didn't have any impact on me, the diagnosis, and I just I wasn't afraid at all. I just thought, okay, this is happening. I just leave it to the expert. I won't bother myself with the whole process. So I just thought, okay, there are the technicians and experts. I just do what they say, and just carried on. So I went through the whole process. I was in hospital for 10 days. I had twice I nearly died on the after the operation. Then at the end I had an infection, which again I was I nearly died. But throughout the whole process, the fear element was simply not there. There was just the mindful awareness of what was happening, minus the fear. And that of course, William Buhlmann, interestingly enough, another out-of-body experience, he had the same sickness at the same time, and we talked about it when we met. And he spent all this time in an out-of-body state and administered healing. He was very close to checking out,
Yeah,
but
he talked to me about that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's an interesting.
I've heard of Preston Dennett. There's another guy that's been on this show who says he travels frequently, but he also said that he could go to places in the astral realm where he could heal himself. And you just mentioned something about healing. Is that true? Can you heal yourself in these places?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. If you go to the astral level, especially if you use a higher energy aspect of yourself, and you can, for example, I had a pulled muscle after we moved in, and felt like a hernia or something, and it was very painful. So I had an out-of-body experience, and when I looked at my body, I could see there was a dark area with very chaotic sparks flying around. And so I would use my astral hands, and I would sort of knead it into sort of a coherent whole, and I could see the sparks created a symmetric pattern, and the hole was closed as I did. And when I came out of the out-of-body experience, I had no pain. Everything was back to as if nothing had happened. So there is this, and a lot of healing actually does take place on the astral level. So people who are healers, they are congruent with the astral body or the higher energy bodies, and they affect the healing that way, not physically.
I kind of want to bring this back around full circle to where we started at in the beginning, that I think skepticism of these things is healthy, but I have stated many times that you're never going to know. This is not the type of thing that you're going to be able to prove scientifically. You have to attempt this stuff, I think, before you ever know. And then what you'll find is when you have this experience, then you're going to be the one that you used to poke at. And, you're going to be the one that no one's going to believe. And you had that situation where you just didn't talk about it for a long time, right?
Yes. Also, I was skeptical myself for a long time. I wanted to have proof. That's why I set up this experiment with my brother in Germany. And even if you have the experience, you're still skeptical if you're a skeptic, and you need to just keep going. You need to get in touch with a core level of awareness to prove to yourself that what you experience is actually real, and that can only come through your own experience. I had this experience, some other people made tests, they read numbers and things like that. But there's a problem with this because we are not transporting to the physical world when we have an out-of-body experience. We are in a parallel world, which is connected to the physical world, but it's a copy of the physical world. So that's why we cannot really visit physical places. We can see the higher dimensional counterpart of it. But if people change things in the physical world, that may not register in the higher dimensional world. So even Robert Monroe, who tried to do experiments, failed, And the experiment I conducted with my brother was I was going to read a word which he put on his wall, and I would come over there and read it and then ring him up and tell him what the word was. And what I found was that he had pinned hundreds of stick-it notes on the wall, and I was totally confused with what I should focus on. So I saw one stick-it note which said, Thursday, 4:00, take car to MOT, So I said, next day I phoned up my brother. I said, look, I told you just use one word on your wall. There were hundreds. He said, no, there weren't. There was one word, and the word was love. And I said, oh no, the one I picked out was Thursday, 4:00, take car to MOT. He said, no, that wasn't it. But I have written in my diary, Thursday, 4:00, take the car to the MOT.
Oh, wow.
So I had a confirmation, but not the way we intended. So he was not really interested in the experiment. He was more interested in taking his car to the MOT, and that is what I saw, and
so,
that's how it...
Okay, so if I say I want to go to, let's say, the Egyptian pyramids, right? I figure out how to get to this plane, the earth plane or whatever, and I want to go to Egypt, and I travel to the pyramids. Am I going to see what's happening there at the pyramid, or is it, in what you're saying, is it's just a reflection possibly, and that's it?
Just going to a copy of the pyramid. And the interesting thing would be, you can be on any dimensional level or in any time scale of the pyramid. You may even go to the pyramid, how it was when it was built and covered in porcelain. And shiny porcelain, or whatever. So you may see the pyramid, how it was sort of a few thousand years ago. Or you may go to the pyramid, what it is now, but you only see the astral counterpart of it, not the physical one.
So, okay. Yeah, so I'm trying to understand this. So earlier you said a child saw you, right? So let's take this example. And this is the weird, right? The real spooky stuff. You go out of body, you go to the pyramid, and let's say me and my son are visiting the pyramids. You go to the pyramid. My son sees you, but I don't.
Yeah.
Doesn't that kind of contradict the mirror idea?
No, what happens was people who see you, they're employing sort of higher sensitivities. So he has activated his astral perception. So he will see me, and children are much more open to see the astral aspects, There's a big thing, because there are schools in Germany which teach, and in England is also one, which teaches children to see blindfolded. And that happens with children between the age of 5 and 12 years old. They can see with blindfold, but what they are seeing with is not their eyes. It is an inner vision. Before they have been trained to disregard the inner vision and see with their eyes. So these are experiments which is worth following up on, seeing without eyes. It's coming more and more into public awareness.
So once we learn to do this stuff, then we should do our own experiments, is what you're saying. Do our own journals, experiment,
Yes.
the way we need to.
Yes. And the more people do that, the better, because what happens then, we can build up a much better picture by getting a consensus. I had the same thing when I frequent astral travel groups. I very often come across people who have similar experience to my own. And then that gives us an indication of the objectivity of the experiences. When people have certain reports, for example, I said, what happens when you go through the window? In my case, very often the window pane bends like a plastic sheet, and then it pops and I pass through. And when I posted this on the forum, people say, oh, that's exactly what happened to me. It seems to be bendy. you know. So if a lot of people, not everybody experiences like that, some people pass straight through, but if a lot of people experience, we get a better picture of what the consistency is, or what the, you know, what the nature of this reality is, you know. So the more people report, the better we get an understanding of our multidimensional reality.
Well, I totally agree with you, and that's what we're going to try to do here on this show and with a bunch of listeners. And you know what? We'll report it back to you too. And we only got like maybe a minute here to tell everybody where they can find your work at. So by all means, please plug away, sir.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, on my website, multidimensionalman.com, there are 3 books advertised. The first one is about my out-of-body experience, how I learned it, how I came to it, how I visited the different levels of consciousness and the past lives and things like that. That came out in 2008. Then that was followed up by another book which came out in 2015, which is called Vistas of Infinity, where I go into much greater detail of the phenomena we can experience after we die. So the book has a subtitle, How to Enjoy Life When You're Dead, and it's like a blueprint, which I always felt should be essential reading for anybody who is facing death, which is everybody. So you get a lot of information from that as well. And of course, there are a number of videos which I've released over the years, which you can find on YouTube by Googling my name.
Well, thank you so much for coming on Lighting the Void. I know it's an early morning conversation for you. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to talk to you, sir.
Thanks very much, Joe. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
You're very welcome. And tomorrow night, guys, it's open lines. Tomorrow night's the night we really have fun, share our experiences, so make sure you come out and use the call-in line in the chat rooms. Don't forget the show is produced by the Fringe FM. It can't be rebroadcast without written permission. Got to get out of here quick. Thanks to Pacho for hooking this up. Don, all of you lovely listeners and supporters, Secret Teachings is up next. See you guys tomorrow night. Good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm not tired.